Welcome to the first episode of Office Hours. My name is Nicholas. Office Hours is a new show that gives NFT and DAO creators a creative and critically constructive environment for workshopping their project's tokenomics. It's my hope that Office Hours helps people with a project, a community, or just an idea refine their sense of who their audience is, what behaviors they would like to incentivize, and how to go to market. This show is recorded live every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on Twitter Spaces and will be available for download here on the Juicecast podcast feed. If you have feedback, please send me a DM on Twitter at Nicholas with 4 leading N's, or drop into the Juicebox Discord at discord.gg/juicebox. Start a thread for your project in the Project Creators channel, or join the Office Hours thread for a discussion of this show in particular. If you'd like to discuss your project with us on air, please drop into the live recording or consider purchasing a priority reservation NFT, which will bump you to the front of the queue. A link to our Juicebox project is in the podcast description. Thanks, and enjoy the show. Hey, welcome. I would love to have somebody who has a project or something that I can help with, or I can just talk about what I've been thinking about. I have a few ideas percolating about ideas. I'm actually just in DMs right now trying to convince Gabriel Haynes to drop an idea I came up with last night we were talking after the Juicebox town hall with this guy Salman, who's a content creator. He's got about 300 viewers consistently, like 300 views per video on YouTube consistently, but variance between like 150 and for 2-year-old videos, he's got up to thousands of views. But for the consistent like weekly posting, so he's got like a small audience. And anyway, we were thinking about ideas for how to monetize his collection or how to make his Juicebox fundraise viable. His audience is an audience that he doesn't expect to have the liquid cash to spend on NFTs to support him. So he imagines that the people who are going to be supporting him are maybe not the direct consumers of the videos, but something else. I was suggesting he should let us just buy ad space by purchasing NFTs and tell him what the ad is in the memo of the NFT. And the reason being that although his audience is probably too small, maybe he can eventually grow into some kind of audience that people want to advertise, like, I don't know, Polygon or whoever's hiring in the geography that he addresses with his Web3 employment content is the theme. But in the meantime, it would at least be fun. He could just put up an NFT and sort of ask Juicebox ecosystem people to pitch in to support his earliest experiment. But I think it would be better if he sells something that's actually fun. And the closest thing I could come up with in that conversation, I think, was just let us buy 15 seconds of ad time on your next episode, or let us either sponsor an episode, come up with a rough price for what an episode costs, and give us an ad placement. Or I kind of think it's actually even spicier to just sell. I was thinking about doing this for my podcast, just sell like $15 I was going to do $10 a second, and I'll sell you 5 seconds per NFT. Unfortunately, the Juicebox interface doesn't yet have purchase multiple of the same tier, and even probably better for some of these things would be 11.55. But at the very least, it would be really nice if you could purchase a lot of them, and then I can like sell only up to the number I'm willing to do in a week in an episode. Say total supply of 6 NFTs, and they're 5 seconds each, and I just read out or ad lib based on what you put in the memo. So that was kind of an interesting. I don't think he's going to do it, but it got me excited about trying to do it. So I was thinking maybe I'll do it for the podcast for my show, but I'm talking to Gabriel Haynes now about encouraging him to do. I'd love to see someone try like Cameo, but you just send the text in the memo of the NFT that you mint on Juicebox. Are one of the few places where you can mint an NFT and send a message that is visible publicly. So I think it makes perfect sense to just let me buy time, because I think 2023 utility was a meme in the 2022 meta at some point around whatever Moonbirds and all this shit, Artifact and Other Side and all these things. But it was always it was a narrative for a speculative future, like vaporware speculative fantasy. It's like fantasy fiction. It's like speculative fanfic for the audience that is Twitter NFT degens and their ability to imagine that what you're telling them might be the future of, and that's over. But I think 2023 actual utility, just sell me something. My challenge for people in 2023 is to sell an NFT people actually want. There can be an element of speculation in it, but let's primarily go for things that people actually want to purchase. So what things do people have around that they can sell? One of them is attention and time. So if you're a content creator, I think selling a little portion of the attention of what you create is one way to monetize what you're already doing and create more sort of a cycle around what you're already doing. So I'd like to see versions that are an ad in a show if you're a content creator, either sell a little piece of attention, but sell it at a fragment that is funny. Like try and do something that's actually fucking interesting rather than just imitative of what Time Magazine and Condé Nast would sell. Like I don't care what a Super Bowl ad is. So hopefully Gabriel Haynes will be down to do something like this, because I think just getting someone to speak your text, if you zoom out a little bit, I don't think it's fundamentally competitive with like Twitch or Cameo or OnlyFans. If your audience is credit card based, I think you ultimately should just go to the ones that are very professional products that take credit cards. So it needs to be something that's targeted for a crypto audience also, which is hard because people want to sell generic shit that no one wants that much. And you really should probably be selling something that's much more specific, situated, and personal to what you're good at. So there's not going to be blanket answers for DAOs. There will be some mechanisms, and I can blather on about the mechanisms that I've been thinking about. But does anyone have a project they want to talk about?
Oh, well, I just wanted to hop in quickly and be like, Jess Sauce today tweeted, was mildly triggering because we need governance. I think Web3 and the whole point of it is governance in many degrees, or a major point of it is governance. Since we're looking at like what does collective ownership look like, and then what does collective like agency over the directionality of that community look like. So I'm really excited to commit more to that because that wasn't really a focal point for us. Like we really tried to launch with a lot of mega utility, which clearly, as you mentioned, became kind of a meme of last year. But he tweeted today, he was like less focus on governance, more focus on business. And so it is this question to me, it's like, well, we really need to be thinking about the products. And I just think it's interesting, like knowing most of you in this space right now, we're really in between digital and in real life worlds. And we're bringing Web3, all of our expertise in real life. And so I know for me, I've just been thinking a lot more about like, okay, well, we're not devs in our community. So what are our products? What is our business? And then how do we create recurring revenue from whatever those products are with the support of the transparent tools of Web3? So anyway, that's just something I wanted to throw in there.
Totally. It's funny because I found too much focus on governance, not enough focus on business. Is that the tweet?
Yeah, that's the tweet. And it was like definitely a bit triggering.
Well, it's funny because I talked to him 2 hours before that about exactly this subject. And I'm just like, and I think I even mentioned you, and I said, you could do NFTs selling a wine club subscription. Like I buy, direct, just do the product directly on NFTs. And I think people would buy it. There's a question mark. Like if you're going to do that, you have such a smaller audience amongst people with MetaMask and ETH. It would probably just make sense to do it on whatever name your Web2 platform. So why do it here? Why would it be a stable recurring revenue here? The bigger question.
I think the interesting point there would be, and honestly, it's interesting because I've been poached like to basically build something like that out for another community. Because I was a bit stubborn about like Thirsty, like not becoming a wine club, even though we had a Web2 wine club. But more and more I'm like, okay, well, that's something that maybe we could just do, like you said. But I think the incentive, at least as somebody who's obviously bullish on the longevity of this, is the collective ownership, which is why governance is also important. The opportunity for folks to get to, vote on what region next box wines highlight, or what, the next season of wines is going to be exploring. And that is what is unique about Web3. But again, like that audience percentage is the challenge. The other challenge is honestly like how decentralized it really can be. Like how do you ship 4 bottles of wine anywhere, especially when you're dealing with folks who maybe want to remain anon. So there's a lot of like weird little pain points, but you're right. It is worth thinking about.
It's nice to have a forum, like a governance forum or some way to make decisions as a prereq. So then it does take leadership oftentimes. It's not like governance for governance sake, but it's nice having a medium for making decisions and having discussions that's somewhat formal to some extent. And it usually formalizes as weight is put on the business aspect. It's put on the thing that the decisions are being made around. So the governance doesn't really matter unless there's 10K sitting in the treasury, and then 50K, then 100K, and then maybe governance formality becomes more important. But some lightweight just forum of having conversations and making decisions together, to call it governance, call it whatever, it's not the focus of NFT design necessarily, but I think it is what allows communities to start delegating to more centralized nodes to fulfill business decisions for a set amount of times, while also being accountable to whatever stakeholders maybe is delineated by the NFT distribution or what have you. So it's not, yeah, it's not one or the other.
Yeah, agreed. I just think it's like you don't actually. I agree that it's good to have a place for people to talk and feel like they can have input. I think just the like I follow just in any community you do want, like if it's a cultural community, you kind of want people, you want to constrain governance, the role of governance to the parts that are fun and not the parts that can rug the community or just in general introduce so much friction that it's not fun to be there anymore for the organizers and the thing just peters out. I think that's like the number one cause of death for these things. And so you want to, and also people are not careful enough and it's just because we don't know how to do it, but we should be creating DAOs where the role of DAO member is fun. Like I don't want to care. I don't care how we're paying for Figma. Like it's not fun to manage that. And I would rather someone responsible just do it. Of course, a freeform governance DAO can choose that. But I think just if you think about it from the perspective of someone on Twitter or, just someone who has a life and is not particularly obsessed with DAOs, but is curious enough, knows the name, knows the word, they want to participate in things that are fun, to do things that are fun with their lives. And they want great experiences. They're not generally, there is a subset of people who are trying to fill the hole that DAO governance of DAO governance in their lives, but I think they're very few and far between. And frankly, I'm not totally convinced that people who are obsessed with DAO governance are people who get shit done. I think you need a certain amount of governance sometimes, but you want as little as possible, just the fun parts. Like
it enables the people who do get shit done though to get like 10 times more shit done in my opinion, and have like an open accountability for that. And a public record of decisions made in the past. I feel like it's hard to be like the opposite of like communities that are geared towards membership being fun is the onus and responsibility lies with like an opaque centralized or an opaque few people who maybe don't have the correct incentives that they deserve in that case for the responsibility they're taking on. And it's at least you distribute that responsibility around for those who want to partake. You don't obviously have to partake. There's a lot of fun that needs to be had for those who don't care about exercising their governance rights or privileges. But
I'm very skeptical of these DAOs, honestly. I think it's
those taking risks need to be the ones taking rewards, right? Like if you're like, there's rewards for those who want to take responsibility over things, and it's hard. I think a lot of the Web3 value prop for me, at least, is ownership, and it is the scary, risky, like responsibility thing. But that's the antidote to a lot of the problems we've seen in the past that we're somewhat fighting against.
I also think it's important, like, where you're seated is so different from like a community like mine, or even, what I first see with like StudioDAO and things like that. It's like, I actually really appreciate that offering I think obviously all of this is true. It's a both and situation, but as I'm just beginning to design the governance for our community with the help of some folks here, I really do appreciate hearing like, oh yeah, like it should also remain fun, or at least like a dose of that should be maybe prioritized as we're thinking about like what comes through. Especially because when I think about my community that has that foothold in reality, or non-Web3, people are coming to us for joy and kind of like a safe entry to Web3 rather than it becoming their lives.
Right. And also, like, I just think the number of people you can get to commit the amount of attention for it, like Juicebox DAO is in a unique position because it is unique smart contracts that enable things that, like, it's not just people with a similar vibe getting together. It's able to
tech protocol.
It's like a serious program that was written by uniquely talented people. It's not everybody. And I had dinner with some people from Zora the other day, and I was like, if the protocol requires that every user be as brilliant at marketing as Nike, your protocol is a failure. Like, you're never going to get that. Those people, they're so few and far between that actually the infrastructure choice doesn't matter then. It's just, who are those people? And those people will get it done one way or the other. But it's so rare to have. So I feel like things need real business models. They need to not primarily be about giving everyone free-form governance, because I don't think they want it. Some people think they want it. Sometimes you do want it, but you probably don't want it as much as you think, and you probably can't spend that much time doing it. And I think most things in the world, Like if every coffee shop required that everybody who ever bought a coffee to some degree participate in their governance, I think it would just everything would be much more bureaucratic, and I think there would be a lot less unique voices. The things that survive, I'm not sure that they would actually be properly incentivized. I kind of like the idea of lots of little things rather than every single thing needing to be huge. Just have things that are so maybe. I think overall we need to explore some dissociation between what's generating the revenue and what's governing the thing. Ideally, you would completely separate the governance token from the revenue generation opportunity. Like, yes, you want to give people who have the token, who are taking risks by participating, governance control, but you also don't just want it to be like buy control of governance of this thing, and then whatever the floor is of it on Uniswap is, or the redemption price is just like anybody can come in and take over the thing. Because I think it will. I don't think most projects will succeed if they're required to do that. I don't think most projects will.
Same page. I think that's a productive way to kind of set the conversation forward. Is not necessarily pinning it against governance. I think both they have its utilities for different aspects of each DAO as a unique organization. But I'm interested to see how to create systems where you don't have to commit to one, right? I feel like oftentimes people feel like they have to commit to one macro strategy that defines how their DAO works. Sometimes there is one that feels right and it makes sense to start with, but oftentimes it's nicer to have moments. I think the idea of a season was pretty popular this past year, but just trying new ways to create micro momentary memberships over scope decisions that pull in like scoped cash flows. Super interesting things, but
exactly.
It's still nice to have the underlying governance. So it's not. I think the more productive way is like, what can we do to have more lightweight, low risk experimentation that feels artful and engaging, that most people can participate in. I have a small example of a concept that builds on Perry's recent project Capsules. So kind of like maybe it might be a decent way to kind of like put some visuals to a concept we can like riff on and then move on to a new one. I don't know what's the best place to post some images here.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying. You have to like tweet them and then go to the tweet and share it to the.
Okay, I'm gonna give it a go here.
Maybe
so if you haven't been to Capsules. Yeah, is that a good recommendation? Can I just post 2 screenshots?
Yeah, please. Yeah, I thought you were going to take a second to do it. Yep, go for it.
No, it's on my phone here. It should be easy. I'll tag you on it just in case it doesn't get seen. So if you ever been to Capsules as a concept, was written by Perry. Brilliant project that puts fonts on chain, and you can go into Capsules and basically mint a word that gets rendered on chain. You can pick your color, pick your font size between 6 different font sizes. Kind of riffed on a concept. Use StudioDAO as a guinea pig here. I think Ken's in the audience may appreciate this. If I just tweeted under the NFT Tokenomics Office Hour header post by Nicholas, it's like essentially it's a prompt of like, you can consider it like a membership into StudioDAO or just some other thing. But it's really reflecting on this idea that like the coolest thing about the tiles collection about a year and a half ago was that everyone who came into the Discord, who joined the community, had something to show that they inputted creatively, that people could look at and admire the choices and artistry in that person's choices. And then that created a whole like subsequent set of verbiage around these things and categorization and like sub-communities, like chaotic tiles versus orderly tiles. So kind of like a concept where you just basically reskin the Capsules UI. Imagine StudioDAO could say like, cool, everyone who comes in here is prompted with like, what's the best movie ever made? And you just type in your favorite movie, and then the second page, once you've got that NFT kind of sketched out, just a text format based on a single prompt, you can mint it. And then you come into the Discord as a new member or a new part of some sub scheme or something, and you're like, in this case, the Shrek guy, right? Who's like, all right, my favorite movie is Shrek. And then everyone can like, you have that moment. Maybe the other folks have also mentioned Shrek. Maybe it's like it's bounded to be like unique, so only one person could ever mint Shrek. But you bring into the community some thing of your own. So it doesn't feel like you're just joining someone else's mission statement necessarily, but the mission statement is welcoming a community to also offer perspectives and create amongst themselves with this broad tone of like what we're here for, right? In this case, films. I don't know if membership is the right word here, or if there's a way to utilize certain things in addition to other things. You obviously don't want to overload communities with all kinds of tokens that are just spread out and then rendered useless. But like, I think the idea of inputting into an NFT, not just minting, but actually giving some piece of data alongside it that gets compartmentalized in the NFT and then rendered and represented, is an interesting mechanism that could be generalized and applied.
Yeah, I agree. Like minter customization is a good. I really want things that are like, there's real demand. Like people can't get enough of it. Like they selfishly want it. They want to go even further than just expressing themselves, but they need it. They like, I think once a NFT collection reaches a certain kind of popularity, then people do want it that way. But it needs to have a kind of momentum that it's a social signal, even if people don't think of it that way. The art is better when it's worth 10 ETH, you know?
That freaks me out though, because then that makes me think of this like high mise culture and like, I don't know. I really hope that that's not like the only route, because I know that
you need demand. You need demand some way or the other. It can be chill demand. It can be Zen forms of demand, but it still needs to be demand. Like at the end of the day, if people don't want it, they don't want it.
I mean, it's funny at the Jango. I don't know if you remember this when we were at that bar, and we were joking about like token goes sideways versus token goes up. Like the vast majority of the engaged NFT collecting community are token goes up people. Like I think just like the current community, everyone who's out there has been trained like,
yeah,
token goes up is good. Like that's what gets attention. And, you know, the quest for real utility is something that I think is still.
Well, the problem is just that like customizing a capsule is not real enough utility for a big audience, frankly. And if you made it attached to a DAO, it still wouldn't be to sustainably. Like it doesn't need to be hype. It doesn't need to be purely speculative. But if it's going to be something else, then you have to offer something of real utility, real utility, not generosity utility, not sympathy utility, but genuine, like I need this ability that this is going to give me. And I think most projects don't have any actual utility.
Yeah, the core utility thus far in DAO NFT is we mint in NFT, like we set a directional tone, we mint an NFT to load a pot, and we collectively then organize the sum of our chipping in into things like buying a ticket to space, right? And I think that there's something there that's actually real and actually organic and actually like definitely feeds on network effects without a doubt. But I think like that is important to also like cherish, you know?
MoonDAO would have failed if they launched right now, frankly. Like it was a bull market thing. It doesn't mean it's illegitimate, but I think there is what I would say. I agree with you. I'm interested in us figuring out the Kickstarter model with Blunt Finance and like a minimum raise. And if you don't hit the minimum mark, which is the mark to do something that people want, that's your utility. If you can't hit $1 million, then you can't send someone to space and everybody gets a refund automatically. I think that will enable lots of these bounty kind of Kickstarter model fundraisers for things, and people will feel more comfortable getting into them. But still, there is real utility there. However, I think that utility would not have been enough in the bear market for that particular example.
Sure. I think like what Kenny's already done is a version of this. Even at Thirsty raising a 10K around certain things, like you sold 40 or so NFTs at 0.04 and aggregated up to $10,000 to then distribute. Unfortunately, you had the onus of making those choices without like all those members being a part of it. But I think there's something there. Like the magnitude doesn't really. Like the bull market it exaggerated the potential, but I think the moment we're in now proves that if we can prove that we can collectively manage $10,000, then it gives people more confidence to put in $50,000. If we can prove we can manage that together, it gives people confidence to put in $500,000.
Sure, but these are all dependent on like it's dependent on shipping something people actually want. I don't really want to litigate existing projects on Juicebox. I don't think it's nice to anybody. But like you need to have some utility that people really want, and it's important that we come. That's what I'm interested in developing here. So look, we can easily go for conversations where we're like, well, we'll just try to raise some money, and if people like it, then more money. But that's exactly what this is trying to be the opposite of. This is shrewd tokenomics. Like, how do you make things people really want? Not advertising exclusively to, like, the guy Salman yesterday, we were talking, and he was like, well, I could do an NFT and just try and sell it to maybe do a Juicebox grant or something. But it's like, if you ask the people who are your biggest supporters for help and then they feel somehow obliged to participate, it's not bad. But if the thing isn't going further than that group, then you have a perverse thing where you're putting a weird pressure on the people who are the most supportive. And so I'm really interested in finding things that can work on Twitter, that can really, like this Gabriel Haynes project, I think. So I'd like to explore like more ideas around, rather than returning to, it's enough. What we're doing is enough. What we're doing, we're already doing. We don't need to argue about that. But I'd like to explore new models. So for instance, one-time use voting tokens. Something connected to this like Blunt Finance Kickstarter style raise idea, where you do a fundraise, there's an NFT that you get for the participation. You use that to decide how to spend those specific funds, say $10,000, or I mean, ideally, it was already defined up front in such a way that convinced enough people to get involved that you hit the limit. So there's probably some pre-chain marketing thinking around what it is that we're trying to do together. And then that token you get to use in that one-time vote. And then once you've used that, it's over. So if you want to participate in some subsequent DAO, we need to make a new NFT to participate in some like one NFT, one proposal, one vote is an interesting way. It doesn't need to be the only existence of the DAO, but like, for instance, Lexicon could offer that for forming. And for each edition of forming, they're dropping an NFT. And then with that NFT, you vote on the viewer's choice of amongst the specific list of musicians that performed at that concert. Very constrained governance, 5 options or whatever. The choices that are on that list were predefined by Lexicon based through their way that they planned forming. And then people come to a concert, they set aside 15% of the treasury. The rest is split evenly between the musicians. 15% is going to be the viewer's choice award. And we're also going to put them on blast on Twitter. Wacko's going to make a 3D model of them. And we're going to tweet it out along with the fact that they get 15% additional allocation because they're the viewer's choice. And now all the musicians are incentivized to go sell the vote tokens because they want their audience to vote for them so that they can get the payoffs, so that they can get the publicity. So like now we're starting to get into a place where there's a reason why I'm motivated as a musician at the show, not just to like the tweet and maybe retweet the fact of the existence of the concert, but to actually get my followers, who are a Venn diagram of people outside of the initial audience, to go and promote and buy the NFT on my behalf so they can support me. Now we're like in something where there's an actual mechanic. Like it's not just, okay, every token is a membership token. We'll see what happens. Does that make sense? I don't know. Dr. Slurp, did you want to talk about your project, or Kenny, or did you want to talk about studio stuff? I know you were thinking about doing like one-time use tokens. You mentioned someone in studio who's thinking about revenue gen NFTs.
Connor, who is here as alien to me.
Oh yeah.
Is we've been figuring out how to. There's like different levels of utility that we've been considering around the NFTs associated with his project. So there's definitely like the high level one that is about personal connection, meeting with managers. Like, if you want to get into the industry, then there's like a way to do something there. But I just think like the utility of fun seems to me to like be something that has actually worked relatively well, right, in this space. Like whether it's the wolf game, or just like people want to have some real outcome and opportunity to like use the NFTs in a way, I think. So there is one sort of tier of NFTs that we've been talking about, and I don't know, Connor, if you want to talk about this, it might be interesting just to get really concrete about it, which is the part of the world of Alien to Me is this multi-level marketing gone way, way out of control and awry. And so without knowing what the real answer is, I think we've had some instincts that like, is there a game that kind of just takes some of the mechanisms from multi-level marketing and makes them fun and bizarre to participate in? So I hear Connor, I'll shut up for a second, but you want to maybe talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the kind of goal is like to make essentially not only the utility being that you get access to the show and that you are helping to create the show and that you're getting access to me to help create the show with me, but like to gamify the experience of the show and the like plot of the show. And like, so with this multi-level marketing storyline, you know, like a funding cycle, NFT funding cycle we have imagined is like you buy products, these multi-level marketing alien cosmetic products, and then you apply those to alien characters from the show, and they do different things to those characters, and then those characters show up in the show with whatever you've done to them, like happening to them in the show. And like we want to take that further even into like actually creating both web games and potentially like VR games that where your NFT decision making or whatever NFTs you purchase gives you certain amounts of power in these games. But fundamentally here, like, you know, Nicholas, I think like this is like entertainment we're talking about here. So the utility is always just going to be like entertainment value. And like whether that's like in game form, in TV show form, in like, you know, talking to me and meeting people, like it's all entertainment for at least for StudioDAO. It feels like that's like, you know, you're coming to the wrong place if you want like, you know, some other type of utility, like someone to come like fix your roof or something. You know,
no, entertainment is utility. I agree with Kent also that like you don't need to sell a good or service directly. Like a lot of what people enjoy about the speculative game is not just the ability to get rich, but the game of it, the collective Twitter fanfic universe. So I don't think and I don't think you need to put ads in the show or anything like so literal, but I would focus on selling the part that is fun and not burdensome for you. So like getting to tag you whenever they want in Discord while you have a TV show to make or whatever. I don't know. Maybe that's, you know, focus on the part that's fun would be my intuition, and not the part that like slows down the production so that you're now a community manager most of the time.
Yeah. There's definitely like an equilibrium point to hit between access to me and like, you know, my producer and stuff, and like also just like, well, we can't fucking be here all the time. We've got to like make the show. And like I think I definitely echo what you were saying earlier that like you know, like not like nothing about it should feel like it should all feel fun. There should be nothing bureaucratic about any of the process, you know, like that's like a job. Like people have jobs, you know, like why would you want like to come have another job to like manage a TV show or like be a show? Like that's not what you're here for. You're here to like have fun, and like insofar as it ever becomes more bureaucratic, I think then we're like heading in the wrong direction, or like people aren't having fun, then like, you know, we know to change there. But yeah, I mean it's tough to like figure out, because the other thing is like, you know, we've been going back and forth on, we need like continued support in some sense, right? And like how, or, you know, we have like, let's say we need to raise like X amount of dollars to make a first season of the show, right? It's like, do you spread out that X amount of dollars to try to raise that over the course of like 6 months, so that like every month, you know, people are buying NFTs to support 2 new episodes being made? Or do you just try to make all that money up front and, you know, go for like broke right out of the gates with some massive NFT launch and try to fund the whole season? Like, so, you know, like this idea of like membership, of having people just like one time click a button that like they can contribute to the show every month, so that we don't have to like keep winning back customers over and over again to like keep making episodes. That's also been like a struggle to figure out like what the best strategy is there. And, I mean, right now we've landed on like each month is like a new game, basically a new NFT game every month that like integrates into the show's storyline. And so like, the first month is like, it's not really gamified. It's just like getting off the ground. But then month 2 is like this multi-level marketing scheme game. And then, like month 3 and month 4, we're brainstorming on, but, that's the model we have right now.
Tell me more about the month 2, like the multi-level marketing. What's the participation mechanic for members?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's basically you're going to buy these cosmetic products, and like based off of which ones you buy, and like, if you have like also like a base NFT from month 1, you can, like we still have to figure out the technical details on all this, but you can like combine those NFTs by like burning them, and then we'll like send you a new NFT that is like a new piece of artwork that combines the 2 previous NFTs that you had already purchased. And then, we're still figuring out how that's going to integrate and all that. But that's like the basic idea, is like combining NFTs to create new ones that are like more unique and more rare, and kind of continuing that process as far as we can go with it, like as many levels deep as we can get, to create more and more like rare, unique things. And then like based off of how many people do that, those things will end up in the show or they won't.
Interesting. I'm wondering if there's a way to directly get people doing the work of multi-level marketing. Like, haha, it's multi-level marketing.
Right. I mean, I don't think we want to become an actual multi-level marketing scheme, but that's like the tongue-in-cheek joke of the whole thing, right? Is that like NFTs are, like crypto is multi-level marketing. And so like we're going to lean into that.
Is there a fictional mechanism for the MLM in the universe that you could do a toy version of or something?
Basically, the main character, is like becomes a representative for the intergalactic multi-level marketing company, and then he has to go sell these products in the show. That's like sort of like a continuing storyline throughout the first season.
What if the people who purchase the token are the Imagineer department of the MLM design studio and get to submit and vote on what the MLM products should be, or something like I think actually I talked to, it was Goldie. You know Goldie, right? You're friends?
Yeah.
So I think Goldie mentioned your project a year or so ago, and I thought a good mechanism would be to have audience participation in like developing the characters for future episodes or something, like do an auction for an NFT that is, the next character, and then have some interaction with the person who buys it about what the character is. But I think it's too much. In this, you could just do giving people who participate, like give them the cool role in the MLM or something.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I think something we definitely talked about, and we're talking about with Goldie way back when, was like, and we're still talking about is the ability to like make yourself into an Alien to Me character. So like, at a certain level of NFT buy-in, like you can submit, this is slightly different from what you're talking about, but you can submit like an image. It doesn't have to be an image of you, but an image of anything or anybody, and like we'll make that into an Alien to Me character design, and then like that character can potentially end up in the show. But I mean, I also, take what you were saying about like having sort of a voting mechanism on like a few different characters that are already kind of there, and like whichever one sells more is the one that ends up in the next episode. I mean, stuff like that is like...
Well, hold on. So let's zoom out for a second. Who is going to buy these NFTs? Are they people who watch the show religiously? Are they people who are crypto people?
That's a great question. I mean, I think it's probably going to be crypto people at the beginning. Obviously, we want to expand to like, the thousands of people that have already seen the prologue episodes online, and kind of push them into the market. I don't know how well that conversion is going to work early on, but the goal is to just make it so exciting and so interesting and so much fun to interact on that side of things that like, even if you weren't somebody who was like super interested in crypto before, like you just gotta be a part of this fun project of creating this universe. And so you're gonna like, set up a wallet and get involved, even if it's at like a low level. So, I think at the beginning, it's going to be people who are crypto people, but the goal is definitely to expand to, the people just who are fans of the show and just want to help make it cool.
Now, hold on. So you get approximately like 1,000 to 8,000 views per video or on YouTube?
Yeah, on YouTube right now, it's something like that.
And then you did a TikTok recently that was like a hit, right? Your first TikTok was a hit?
Yeah, it was like 250,000 views, which was the first prologue episode. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna say it in the harshest way first, and then we can go nicer. But stop doing you. Why are you still doing YouTube? Why don't you just do TikTok? You're so much more popular there. But okay.
No, I mean, yeah. Obviously, I'm on TikTok a lot more these days. I mean, fundamentally, I think there's no way to monetize TikTok like directly. But also, I think like people on TikTok are like much harder to retain. So like I have like 10,000 like that just from that first few videos on TikTok, right? Like, there's 10,000 followers on the TikTok channel now. And like, I have like 100 Twitter followers on here, but it's like.
But do they watch the videos? What's the views like on TikTok?
Yeah, so that's the thing is on TikTok, your follower count doesn't matter very much because TikTok is primarily like an algorithm that's like a For You page. It incorporates people you follow into that For You page, but you have to actually like slide over to your accounts that you're following. So like you might have 10,000.
So why did people watch the first TikTok? It wasn't because they were following you. Why was it?
It's because of the algorithm. I mean, it's just like.
It's got to be something in the video. There's a lot of other videos the algorithm didn't pick.
Oh, it's funny. It's good. I mean, is that what you're saying? Yeah, it's a good video.
But there's something about that one that clicked with the
people like
TikTok.
That one.
Yeah. So I mean, frankly, I'll just out of 8,000 viewers on YouTube, probably very few have ETH they're willing to part with. Probably very few have ETH. Probably very few have wallets. And a tiny fraction have ETH they're willing to part with. So selling to the audience of people who are already following on YouTube, going to be a tough road. You tell me you have 250,000 views on a TikTok. That's a much bigger audience. Even if it's the same percentage, that's a lot more people who are potentially buying the exact same product. Okay, it's hard to repeat the views on TikTok, but it's something clicked with the way you edited that video and the content, obviously, but something about having to reduce it to a shorter. I assume it was shorter than the YouTube's.
Yeah, I mean, so TikTok has a 10-minute. That video was not shorter. That video was just as long as it.
Oh, that's very interesting. I didn't expect
10-minute time thing. But the thing is, like our episodes are supposed to be like around 10 minutes, like once we get the full season going. But you're right. I mean, my focus has been on doing more TikTok, and the YouTube channel has been dead for a year now, just because there's nothing to put up there, and so I've been making like more short form stuff for TikTok. But I still think the percentage of people, it's going to be tough no matter where.
But I don't see any reason why you would think the percentage would be greater. Oh, I guess because your followers are more consistently. You're getting like 1,000 plus views consistently on YouTube from the 2.3K subscribers versus on TikTok you have 4 times as many subscribers, but they don't see the videos, so maybe they're harder to monetize. I still think having what is that, like 40x? I don't know, whatever it is, size audience is actually, it's like on that one video, it's like 250x the average video on YouTube. So that's.
I mean, fundamentally, it's not hard to do both, right? Like you make the same content and you put it in both places, try to get as big of an audience as possible. I mean, the goal is to grow the audience with more and more, much better videos and episodes. And so we're going to put it in every place we can get it on. That's going to be Twitter. That's going to be YouTube. Cool. That's going to be TikTok.
But just for in terms of monetizing the audience, it seems like right now, I mean, I say the same thing to every project, which is if your audience is not primarily MetaMask having ETH people who are whale enough to ball out on some random fundraiser that they somewhat are aware of through already knowing the videos, where it's just very hard. So you're maybe selling to crypto people rather than to your actual audience. There's probably a tiny sliver that's overlap. The show could evolve to be more overlap. You could have more crypto economics in the MLM and try and drive views on TikTok in the crypto trader economy and NFT degen economy to try and bring them into your universe, and then have a larger portion of your total viewership be people who have ETH they're willing to part with. Or you can, but either way, we must be very shrewd about who we are actually selling to. Like, we can't just wave our hands at like, someone's going to buy it, probably. Like even people with huge audiences might not be able to move NFTs if none of their audience has Ethereum. So that's just obvious. Like, but I would say focus on the fun part, not on the community, bugging you all the time, and try and find what a viewer actually wants to buy to influence the show, if that's the direction you're going, and cut away everything else, because it's a distraction to you and the sales pitch for the NFT.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, once we get launched here at StudioDAO, I think that we'll definitely be exploring a few different things to try to figure out what's hitting the best. And we're definitely going to try to grow the audience into the crypto space more. The goal is not to make it a crypto show, because we do want it to have broad appeal too, right? You don't want it to be something that's just like, you're only going to get this if you've got, like 5 ETH in your MetaMask right now. Like, you're not going to get the jokes if you don't have that. Like, that's not great. So we're trying to do something that I think is appealing to everyone, but definitely trying to loop in more of the crypto community, just because we know that those are the people who are going to have a wallet in the first place.
Totally. If it was 2021, you could maybe get people to, I don't know, the myth of broad-based marketing from origin from crypto. But the truth is, like, there's less than 100,000 people trading NFTs on Ethereum right now. Anyway, if you're going to try and monetize those people, sell something that monetizes them, and don't worry about hypothetically monetizing people who are not ready to pay, or are literally not capable, would have to get MetaMask, get Coinbase. It's not going to happen. Like, don't vaguely bank on those people eventually converting. It's so far away. What you're selling has to be so exciting to them that it's got to be like 10 times more exciting than the Patreon, an equivalent Patreon, given how much friction there is between them and doing it. So it's a hard pill, but I really suggest focusing on what you're trying to sell as an NFT, trying to sell it to people who have Ethereum or whatever token on whatever chain you want. Okay, I want to jump to somebody else. Pitmaxi, what's up? What's your project?
Hey, what's up? This is my alt, by the way, if you couldn't tell. I was just exploring around NFT Twitter. That's not like my normal echo chamber, but I saw the name Tokenomics, and then you guys were talking about rev sharing, and I had to stick my hand up. I guess I'll pitch you on like the structure that I'm working on right now. And so, like, basically, part of the reason I got so fed up with NFTs is because everybody thought when they bought an NFT, specifically a profile picture, that they were somehow like buying ownership in the company. So I decided to create like this thing called a yield coupon, and it's supposed to, kind of mirror common stock, without the SEC like looking at us and being like, yo, what are you doing? But that, you don't have to stake it or anything. So it works exactly like a share of a company. As soon as you send it to a different wallet, the tokens, that are kind of like dividends, automatically get, farmed, and you can collect them whenever you want. Those tokens, then you can put them on the open market and sell them to people that want to buy like the actual PFP, the art, that are trying to build a digital identity. So there's 1,000 of those coupons, and then I'm building out the PFP side of the business. But what I'm really going for is trying to get like that initial 1,000, I guess you can call them investors, and they'll kind of be in a little bit of like the board. They're just like the common stockholders, that their incentive is for the brand to grow, and as more demand comes into the brand, they could sell their tokens for more.
Yeah, I think the hard part you'll find is marketing a collection such that it generates the demand that people want to have control over it. It's not a great time for it in the market. It is still possible, but it's much harder than it was last year. So a lot of projects that succeeded last year would not succeeded right now. So I guess the hard part is, this is kind of, I didn't totally follow, but it's like in the neighborhood of why people buy artifact NFTs or Bored Apes or those things. So the question is like, why this collection? And the promise of being able to govern something that currently has no value is not enough to create the spark so you need something to create the spark to get people excited. So I guess that would probably be the hard part. Does that make sense?
I guess, yeah, like I can't just have that part of it. I'm expected to sell out. So the other part of it is giving people, like every profile picture project, they completely, I don't know if you've ever read Contagious, but, after
No.
reading that book, Oh, okay. But all right. So one of the key takeaways from that book, he's the professor at Wharton for marketing. And one of the biggest principles is that 80% of marketing is done through word of mouth. Like all of the marketing efforts that every major company does, at the end of the day, it's still word of mouth. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole why it works like that, but just believe me, that's how it works. So the biggest thing on NFT Twitter, the biggest asset you could have as a brand is someone actually wearing the profile picture, the NFC as their avatar, because that's like, on my main account, in the past 2 weeks, I got over 5 million impressions. Like 5 million different people saw my profile picture. Like that's a lot of people. And, multiply that by 10,000 people, there's some significant reach that's going on there. And, eventually there'll be a small percentage of people. I mean, email only converts 2%. I can only imagine what the conversion is on people that see a profile picture and are like, oh, I want to make that my profile picture.
You should do an advertising profile picture where it's everyone's profile picture is controlled by the DAO, I don't know, like FloorDAO, where you have to buy the tokens to change what the metadata is of the image, and everybody sets that image as their profile picture. Although I think in reality, people just do it by copy pasting the JPEG mostly, because people don't use Twitter Blue or whatever. But in any case, it updates with what the DAO decides. I think it's very hard to launch. You need some reason that people have done this different ways. They've sold it as a cultural club for a certain kind of social class. They've sold it as humor from a particular Twitter account that people know. But you need some hook that will like actually get people to give a shit. Because obviously there's like thousands of NFT collections and hundreds of new ones every day. So why this one?
The only part I'm missing is like, I guess what you were referring to is like a reason to rock it. Like, sure, the art could be good, but if there's no community, nobody wants to participate. But like with this collection, I made it so that all of the traits that you buy them before you compile the PFP. So you actually get to choose what your PFP looks like instead of like, 500 assets or layers randomly getting compiled and then just saying like, oh, spit out 10,000 or 15,000 of these things. At the end of the day, you're going to get like a Nerf cap with an army vest.
Yeah, there've been collections. The one I always think of is not a particularly famous one, but Nifty Dudes. But there's been lots of collections where you get to customize what gets minted. There's a max total supply, and then the collectors decide what they're getting. There's lots of collections that do mechanics like that. But again, it's like I think technical features can be of value if the dream that you're selling is about technical philosophy or technical innovation to an audience that cares about those things, like the on-chain NFT community. If you have some cool on-chain mechanic, maybe you can selling to people who are interested in on-chain mechanics, which is a very small subgenre within the larger NFT community. Others have been selling like, the classic one was we're going to build a metaverse. There's lots of different ones, but you need some hook that is a narrative hook. If you're in this playbook of NFTs, like NFT PFP style collections, you need some reason why people can idealize it as a speculative object. Although frankly, I think maybe not the best time to launch one of those.
So do you think I should double down on the narrative being like the governance of, I guess it's not, I don't know if I would say it's a loophole, but, being able to receive a form of dividend that's not actually a dividend.
Yeah, that's cool. That kind of reminds me of redemption in Juicebox. Yeah, I think the problem is just there is no dividend because there is no demand. So the demand is dependent on the interest of the token is dependent on there already being demand, which is what the interest is trying to sell you. So it's hard. You need Christina Aguilera to do a TV ad about it or something. You need you need to kick it off. There needs to be some reason why people can believe in it to kickstart your cycle. Yeah, at least that's my take. Does anyone have a different take?
I just think so many of those mechanisms are driven by wash trading and people taking the dividends, people buying a lot of tokens and then just like pumping it up. Like I think the trust in, for people who've been burned by that stuff is gone. And that it's like, I think it's just really hard to imagine where like the promise that you're actually going to make your money back is, or that you're actually going to, that is tough and is actually cross purposes with just delivering joy or fun or something that's interesting. to participate in. So, I mean, I really think it's like I guess the question is like, if you're generating a lot more tokens, it should generate more membership in the community, and it should try to make that community more interesting to be a part of, rather than just, you buy in early and then you want the community to grow so that you have exit liquidity on whatever you've bought into. I just think like those schemes in a market where there aren't people coming into the environment are going to be tough. And like, I don't know if anyone followed like Numo's drop last week with like the pad that he did, but like at the last minute, someone came in and like people came in and minted like thousands in like the last hour of the mint and then ran it up on OpenSea. But I mean, it's obvious what happened in terms of, it's a super cheap mint. It was like 0.005. And all of a sudden it's like 0.1 with like 50 ETH of volume. But like, where did that come from? How did that really happen? People were just wash trading to pump it up onto the charts. And then I think like the free meta is also difficult, right? Like we experienced this at the launch of StudioDAO, that when we had to go back and do a mint for 0 in order to like, there was a moment when the UX was a little broken and some people contributed and didn't get the NFTs, but they could come at that, get the NFT with a 0 transaction. When we did that 0 transaction, it fired off the bots, and all of a sudden there were like 30 0 transactions coming into the box, into that terminal. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not convinced that any sort of like complicated schemes with later on yields and stuff like that are really going to, in terms of beyond just like the most hardcore degens. And that's just honestly not what I'm here for. It's like, I want to see this go broader and I want to see it get easier. And I think trying to just sell to people who already have ETH is like, I think we need to make it easier for people to come in. And it's like, you're joining a club. It's a great club. This is what we do here. And it can be cheap and fun. It doesn't need to be super heavy, but I think it needs to get a lot easier for us to really grow it significantly.
Yeah, I agree a lot. And I'm way more of a fan of patience and strategies that pierce through whatever the hell market we're in. Just like care for the people who are there and who are around you, who you feel like you can welcome into the space safely. And I think like, yeah, there's this obsession with we need to go and like make things pop off overnight or pop off within the month, instead of like just care for the 5 people who are here and like turn that into 15. In a year that'll be 50. In 2 years it might be 500. In 3 years it might be 10,000. In 4 years it might be 100,000. Like a movement, right? But like if you actually give a damn about what you're doing and you think it's important and it's a longer term thing, you're patient about it. It's like that energy is contagious, and I think that the tools and all that stuff will resolve itself along the way, and we need to put pressure on resolving those access points, as Kenny said. But I just like I'm a little bit more of a proponent of like the patient passion.
I think one thing, and listening to everybody speak, I think one thing about the utility, the community aspect of things that is interesting with FIFA is the short timeline that is there, so that you can see what's happening within that quote unquote collection or that experiment and move on or change it immediately after. And so there's not like this really long timeline of, waiting and waiting to see what's happening or what's coming around the corner. It worked or it didn't. Some things went well, some things didn't, and you can change it for the next experiment or the next game. And I think when you are creating something around an existing community that a lot of people already care about, they're going to be willing to dive into any sort of thing, whether it's an NFT or any other sort of thing that you can purchase, because they're so passionate about that community in general. And to answer the question, Nicholas, about like, what's the upside, kind of having this like written back and forth, what I had stated was that the ultimate utility is equity in a project. And the upside is, obviously it's got to be financial. Like financial in the sense that if I supported this project early on, or this product early on, that the person who's created that project is creating an opportunity for the evangelists of that product to benefit. And you hear about this with platforms like Instagram, where the people and even Twitter, the people who were on it the most, the people who created the community, the people who really, launched it, got nothing out of it. They didn't get any sort of upside besides the ability to communicate amongst themselves and share their lives. And I think when you're talking about NFT utility, or any utility for that matter, coming out of crypto, I think one of the things that's going to attract the most people is the ability to first put out a product, say, hey, this product is cool. I have a few users. You get to benefit from this blowing up and evangelizing it just like I will.
Right. But the product itself cannot be that access, because you still need to be selling something for profit that is not creating an equal amount of equity. Otherwise, all that you're selling is equity, and the only funds that are there are the equity, or generated by equity. So you can decline what percentage, but it's like you need to have something that is of utility there. Otherwise,
I agree. You have to have a product. You have to have a product that people want to use. So like it's kind of like sometimes people do this backwards. They create the NFT with the promise of something coming later. And I understand that you need money and startup capital to be able to do these things, a lot of these things. But I think the projects that are successful are the ones who come out with something first, even if it's a really clunky version, and they're getting a few people to really enjoy using it, and then building a form of capital off of that. When people were talking about MoonDAO earlier, I agree that the bull market had a lot to do with the success, but I think, and you were obviously there with Jango, and I think another thing that was really important was that the founders had a very clear sense of what didn't work with their previous project, the things that they really wanted to go against or go away from in the previous project. And they had a community of people that had the same viewpoint as them. And so when they were able to, work out sort of the mechanics and what they're going to do, that community was already behind them, and they were able to accelerate at a really fast, pace. But, you could go back to the very first 2 or 3 Twitter spaces that they had, where it was like 3 or 4 of us in there, and the ticket to space wasn't even an idea. It wasn't something that was really in the roadmap. It was literally going to the moon. And, I think as the community built and got on board, they sort of pivoted into a thing that was achievable, because if they didn't have something that they actually achieved, it never would have worked. They had to have a milestone that they hit that was realistic.
I agree. I think one of the great insights of Constitution DAO that MoonDAO learned from, one of the things that it did keep consistent, was having a very specific mission, whether that evolved over time or whatever. But MoonDAO certainly succeeded at conveying that they had a very specific mission. And I think that was great for a large charitable fundraise. Frankly, I don't think it would work in the current market. I think what you were delivering would have to be somehow more tangible to people right now, because they're not willing to because not everything is going up. Because at the time you could purchase Mooney, and although nobody should have expected it, some people undoubtedly thought, oh, there's going to be a token with a limited issuance. I take note of that fact in advance. This market is not one in which that would be a relevant thought for almost all the cases. So, but I agree with you that there's. But I just don't think we need to focus on that, frankly, because I think everybody's already doing that. Everybody's already telling themselves people are just going to join me in my mission because I'm so great. And I want to find ways to help those people actually generate revenues, which would be the other half of that thing. Agreed, shared equity in some project, but again, we're talking about on some level, fundamentally changing the decoupling governance in the project or membership participants in the participation in the project and where the revenues are coming from. In your example, you need to have a product that is also generating revenues. JBDAO, for instance, does this by charging a 2.5% fee on the whole protocol. So JBDAO can have this governance token that has a slightly decoupled relationship from the revenue generation because it has a whole protocol that's giving it fees. And projects on the protocol don't have that advantage. So we need to be I really want to stick to like, we need to develop things that people want to buy. I'm open to whatever that is, but they have to actually want to buy them. And being a part of the community, that's covered. People are already doing that all over the place. We don't need to stand that. Everyone does that, but it's the default. If you build a project that you're asking people to support you to become a member, people are going to do that anyway. Dr. Slurp, you've been waiting forever. What's your project and what would you like to talk about?
Hey, thanks for having me. So my project is it's a drum machine that's fully on chain. Over the weekend, we put P5JS and P5 Sound on chain, so you can basically store the code for whatever you want in P5 and P5 Sound fully on chain pretty cheaply at this point. Like you're just paying for the size of the program, which is very nice. So over the past month or so, I've been building these drum machines using this technology. And I'm getting to the point where I want to start putting them out there. So the idea is that like when you mint one of these NFTs, you're minting a specific like kind of bespoke drum machine, and you're able to store the like the beat that you save on the drum machine fully on chain. So like when you mint it, it'll have a song that I wrote that's on the drum machine. But if you buy it, like you can use it. It's like its own on-chain instrument. You could save your beat, and then once you do that, like your beat is on chain, and you could even mint copies of it for people to like own if you wanted to, like as the owner. Yeah. So it's kind of like a play on like what a music NFT is. Like instead of you're just buying a song that's stored on IPFS, like you are buying an instrument that anybody can play. Like it's just a website, or it's just the pane in OpenSea. Like it's a fully interactive drum machine that anybody can play, but only the owner can like save the beat and like kind of like immortalize that on chain. You could always rewrite it, like I'm not like saying like it's written in stone. Like let's say someone new buys it, they could rewrite whatever the beat is for that specific drum machine. So the thing that I'm kind of like oscillating between is how to release them. Like, should I make them one-offs and each drum machine is unique and I kind of like auction it, and like people are paying for the privilege to like write the song for this specific drum machine that I like built by hand for this drop, or maybe doing some small drops of between like 10 and 100 drum machines that are all relatively similar, kind of like in a generative fashion, or what, or just have it be an open edition. Whenever anybody like wants access to a save slot, they can mint one. Like I'm kind of leaning towards the one at a time or a few at a time and seeing what happens with the demand. But I would just like to hear your ideas.
Is the functionality of the NFT in play, or is that locked down?
It's not locked down.
So at present, what people are buying is the opportunity to be the one person who can set the track. This has been done before, so it's not getting brownie points for being the first. Not that I think those generally matter very much.
But it is on chain, like all the sound synthesis is being it's programmed on chain and it's being synthesized in your browser. So it's like an on-chain system for that.
The issue for me is I don't know why I want to own one. I can think it's cool. Like a lot of the on-chain projects have this problem where there's a very, very, very small community of people who give a shit about on-chain anything, and they all buy each other's projects, but they buy like one of each, and everybody sells 75 NFTs. And it's fine, but it doesn't justify the amount of work that was put into it, and it doesn't achieve the meme status that gets the idea of on-chain art into more people's minds and hands. So I think there is reason to try to juice the tokenomics to make something more. Like there have been very sophisticated, I just pulled up 0xchain.art and I was looking at like OKBC, that project, or like Watch Faces World, or I don't know, all of these projects. They're extremely sophisticated projects, but very, very few of them are successful. One that comes to mind, bag holder alert, is Terraforms. But Terraforms isn't just selling you the functionality in the tech demo. They're selling you a whole philosophy around blockchain art or something, right? Like it's a whole vibe. Not that that's the only vibe that you can sell, but my question is the opportunity to own my own one of these things, how many people is that appealing to? And is there a variation on that is more appealing, or could in some other way achieve a breakout hit rather than a hit amongst the small community of people who are enthusiasts in the kind of artisanal practice of on-chain art, which is totally legitimate. And if you don't want to sell thousands, then that's, if you're happy selling 50, that's fine. But if you want to sell more, what could be, like, there's something missing around why I need to mint it. Like a lot of the music NFTs that dropped that had this, whether it wasn't all on-chain, but where the metadata was mutable only by the token holder, part of the idea was like, maybe this beat will be something you want to own, or maybe Snowfro did one and that one's worth something. Or there's also like a couple trends emerged, like some were more focused on, I forget what the audio workstation one was, but that, it came out at the same time as Beat Foundry. Beat Foundry was more going with a path of like partnering with specific artists to drop collections associated with that artist. So there was more framing around the specific choices rather than just a musical instrument that you can purchase as an NFT. So I wonder, I don't have any immediate super strong ideas, but I wonder if there's something that you can do to make the token, that make the purchase make more sense. Like why now? Why this? Why me? Why should I buy it? And I don't know if saving beats is the idea that the beats go and can be reused in songs afterwards. They have some cultural impact, or it's really just like, I made a P5 instrument and you can control it. I wonder I don't know if any ideas come to you in talking about it.
There's a few ideas. Like I totally hear the feedback that it's very niche and that like the on-chain community is what it is. And they're like really just buying into a specific philosophy of what they think is important and where they think their data should be and all that stuff. And I've definitely drunk that Kool-Aid, and like, I'm like, this is so cool that like the music is there forever. Like as long as you're able to render P5 stuff, like you'll be able to enjoy this music and this content. Like it's going to outlast me as long as Ethereum outlasts me. So that's part of it. But in terms of like actually something that like normal people would care about, like partnering with a musician and making an instrument specifically for that musician, having them create the beat instead of just me creating the beat. I think people would want to do that, or would want to buy it to something like, let's say Kenny Beats made the beat for this one and I made a drum machine for him based off of like the stuff he likes to use. Like I feel like a lot of people might want to buy that.
Totally. Or I think even maybe constrain further, like a Kenny Beats drop. Kenny has made 10 beats and they're all for sale. And you can also buy a blank slate and remix using the same beat palette that he had. You can make your own beats and let's see what happens. I think one problem with this is that I'm not totally convinced, if I'm honest, that people want to like click and scroll through NFT beats. They want good beats. I don't know how much they care that they're on chain or NFT. So partnering with an artist can help, but even then, like what matters is that they be incorporated into songs that people like, or that they feel like useful fodder for making songs, I guess. I'm not sure exactly, but it's like, okay, but so let's say there's 100 of them and 10 of them are Kenny Beats and those are for sale, at, let's say on auction or whatever, Dutch auction or something. And then there's 90 available for like a flat rate that's really cheap. So you can make your own, but like, I guess it's cool. I think that's hotter than just, hey, here's 1,000 NFTs. They're all whatever. You can do blank slate, go for it. At least preload it with some meaning, something that you can associate to.
So I think for me, like the meaning and the appeal for it comes from like, I'm trying to think about like Web3 or blockchain as a venue and trying to make a project where it's like music for that venue or an instrument for that venue. And like, what does it actually sound like? And what is the aesthetic of that? And this is trying to answer that question. And I don't know if anybody else is trying to answer or even questioning that, like, what is music here, like in this place? So that's like one of the things I'm trying to play with.
It's an interesting question because I feel like there's not a lot of music, like it's just scrolling Twitter or whatever. Occasionally there's videos or events with music, but it's not a very programmed audio soundtrack.
Yeah, like the sounds that I'm making like are informed by like what is this medium? It's like what sound libraries can we affordably put on Ethereum to actually explore this? So I think like that narrative might be a thing to like hone in on more, to like get people to think about like, oh, this is what it is. Like this is the club. This would be the music of the Web3 club.
I think it's also interesting to consider if the goal is mints or if the goal is now a tool in your toolbox as a creative artist or as a programmer to build with it the next thing. And as long as like people aren't putting pressure on you to kind of like continue attending to the foundation, it's nice just to create these components that have the composability traits of on-chain, that have all of this what I think is very useful, maybe not in the short term, but in the long term. I only care about the long term, and very much just like use your creation as a tool to kind of allow you to create more things, and that is the best form of marketing in a way. It's just creating on top of previous building blocks. But there's certainly an appeal, and even if it's the audience is small at first, I think like the persistence, the patience, the belief in the thing that you're building as it allows you to continue building better things is incredibly valuable.
Totally. Yeah. Thanks for that.
Sure, but he's got to pay rent.
Yeah. I think instruments are really interesting because they're a way for communication to occur. Right. So I think all different kinds of instrumentation are sort of, I think, valid services for exploring this. Like, I would love to see something where we took like, what if we put this up on Twitch during a forming, and that basically people could mint the beats that got played as like get Darby Trash or someone to do something on top of it and just make it like something that the community can participate in. If someone makes something that's great, the community loves it, the community can like buy another loop of it and that like funds some treasury. So it's like use it as between the audience and the chain.
Yeah, that would be really fun to make them for different formings, like have a beat for each forming or have that be one of the contributor for the forming tickets bit.
Yeah, or just start with like let's like start with like one thing. It's like an interstitial thing or something that I think there's room for people to participate and to do something. I mean, but it would also be something where I think you would want it to be an input that whoever was controlling that feed could go to, but didn't have to, right? So if it's good and it's interesting, then it gets put up. There's still a person.
Yeah. Or maybe even like pre-record it for forming. Like they usually do that. Like MyFi did the video for that one time. It was really fun. But it'd be cool to like do it where like the visuals actually are how the visuals of the drum machine are, and like glitch, like run that through the analog glitch process to like have a set, and even like have Darby Trash put a rap on the set or something.
Yeah, sick. I think there's so much to do building on each other's momentum like this. I think, Kenny, it's a huge point to bring up, like cross collaboration and strategy across projects to kind of fill each other's voids and double down on opportunities. I think with forming, I also think it's like the 30 minutes before forming. It's like, all right, I'm already thinking about forming. I'm already like organized around a screen and like dope speakers. Someone should just create the pregame, and that can really be whatever medium or like that the thesis that people are going to care about. And then it'll be one person at first. It'll be 3 people, then 5, and then it takes time. Even forming took like a year for us to get to like 30 people showing up to shows. But that's okay. It's still making progress. It's still inspiring every marginal new person who comes through. And I think that's like very important.
Yeah, it's so fun. And it's just awesome that you guys are focusing on like paying the artists. Like, and you never see that.
Yeah, exactly. So I agree, and it's great to bring up the like long-term perspective. However, I do think that if projects want to survive a year, they need a revenue stream, and Lexicon Devils is lucky enough to have an enormous grant from Juicebox DAO, which they totally deserve, but not every project is able to do that. So we need to establish sales mechanisms that are not based primarily in hopium, generating revenue so you can pay your goddamn rent. And I'm very very hardcore on this, because if we just allow ourselves to drift into like soft reasoning about how it's so virtuous, how we're trying things regardless of whether they work, and with tiny audiences, it will not scale, because other projects we don't have enough money to just give everyone money to do their art project that nobody wants to buy, unless what their goal is to make an art project and not be so concerned about the sales numbers, which is a totally legitimate thing to do. But just know that, so I think the pregame idea is a great idea, and there's an audience there that's captive. And I do agree that audience will grow over time. Overall, it's still a very small audience. I mean, even CryptoVoxels, for all its accessibility, for being available on an HTTP, on a URL, it doesn't open on my iPhone 13. It doesn't open on my iPad Pro. It only opens on my computer, at least in that space. So it's like really small audience. Anyway, again, let's try and come up with dangerous mechanics that will actually like sell. I agree, you don't have to do hype, but what I'm interested in is NFT tokenomics that do not depend on small communities growing slowly. That model exists. Any kind of token will work for that, because it's a community of enthusiasts. So I think, bringing some cultural element. I mean, frankly, if I think about the shows like Twitch shows where well-known DJs go through submissions from people, I don't think I want to mint all of them. I don't think that would work. I don't care. I don't even think it would make sense for whoever these DJs are. I can't remember their names, but all famous DJs doing these shows, reviewing the clips. Even the most popular ones, I don't think it would be a suitable fit to just say like, okay, and anybody can mint, there's some auction going on for the winner of the Kenny Beats show or what, maybe, but there's probably something that makes more sense.
Look, I decide what goes on Kenny Beats. Let's just get it straight. But I hear you. I just think that there's two sides to this, right? But
the other side is accepted. Like, we don't need to argue in favor of let's do tokens that people sort of want. Like that is the status quo. It will continue regardless of what we say. I really want us to focus office hours on dangerous mechanics that can sell tokens in new ways, not defending existing models that people are going to do regardless of whether we talk about it or not, because it's just not productive. Like, yes, people will continue to do membership tokens with small communities and no real tokenomics, and because people are enthusiasts for that subculture. That's great, but we don't need to argue in favor of it. That is the status quo.
So here's an idea. What if once a week I auctioned off a 1-of-1 drum machine and see what the actual demand is? Like, I'm just putting one idea out there, and like every week, like, come out with a different drum machine with a different like functionality and different instruments and different tempo and time. Like, so like they're very unique and like having a unique aesthetic feel too.
Here's what I would say. I don't think the NFT currently, I don't see how the current NFT that you've designed is flexing the fact that it's on chain. What is it about being on chain that's relevant? I don't think it's just a P5 sketch that you can save to on chain. It has to have something more, like the way Nouns aligned CC0 on chain art. Like, there was a relevance to that, and an infinite auction, so they don't need IPFS hosting 100 years from now. It'll still be selling. Like, you need a mechanism where the fact that you've done all this work to put it on chain is somehow relevant and flexed in a meaningful way, not just like, and whatever, and here's something. It has to be why, like, it should be dangerous art. It should be art that isn't allowed, that Cloudflare is going to block or something, and that's why it needs to be on chain. It needs to synchronize with what your unique value proposition is of the technology that you've built.
True. I guess that's the next thing to figure out.
Right. So what is a beat and maybe it's not a beat, frankly. Maybe it's a South Park with, I don't know, racist memes in it or something that Twitter would ban. I don't know what the reason for doing artwork on chain is. Frankly, I think the main reason right now is just the intrigue of people who get the technology but don't yet have a application. It's more about meditations on what it means to be able to do it than an actual practical use case so far. The real practical use cases are shifting fungible tokens around and exchanging value.
You could do PLA for like weapons and stuff, defense distributed. That would be edgy enough to go on chain, and kind of like freedom of speech and all in one, first and second amendment.
Awesome. So 3D models for disposable guns, 3D printable guns.
Yeah. That would be cool.
There's your business model. I guess you only have to put it on chain once, though. You need to find a way to get recurring revenues out of it.
I think there's still something to say about being able to build on the componentry, and like, who cares humans? Like, people like, well, yeah, I understand that the pay rent. I understand like how can you sell things like now, but I also think that that might be a slightly a fool's errand and a local max if we're not piercing through to like, well, what do you care about? Like, what's important here, and what's your passion in this thing? And if it's like being able to build on top of a beat, like again, leverage the fact that it's on chain to compose with it, and then do it in a way that's generalizable so others can do it also. The more you flex your own tool, the more others will eventually catch on. And if you spend your time in the base layer just trying to like create little things just to kind of like get change rolling in, it might kind of, well, it might put stress on you as a creative person who needs to actually build on like the thing that you actually care about, you know?
Totally. So maybe the real problem here is that it doesn't sound like that's a core, the composability of these beats on chain doesn't sound like it's being flexed in the current NFT metadata.
Yeah, so that's something that can definitely be built, can be added into it, and just like being able to like combine them or like have multiple ones and they affect each other, or kind of just like being able to use it as like, you can take parts from some of them, like oscillators or beats or rhythms and stuff, and combine it to each other. So like really you're making a larger instrument, and then like maybe like someone would actually like want to use it for a show, or want to use it for a set, or want to use it like to compose music for whatever their virtual experience is.
Yeah, I think, yeah, like building the base composable on-chain thing and expecting others to come in and build with it, I think it's probably very unlikely. But giving yourself the freedom to
building it myself, like building it in a way where it's just like it's gonna grow on itself.
But also, like, if you're not actually the first user for it, then maybe there's no users for it. Like, if you're not using the tool to do beats and it's fun for you, and it's also some way specifically relevant about being on chain.
It's really fun for me.
Okay, great.
Like
then it's
I feel like last week it got to the point where like I fixed something with the timing, and now it's like so fun. Like I feel like I'm starting to record it and put like actual synthesizers on top of it, and using this as like it really is a drum instrument at this point. So like I should start making like publicizing like songs and stuff that I'm making with the machine, you know? And like I've been posting the videos if y'all have seen on my profile, but there's
you having fun is that feels like there's an opportunity for that to be contagious. It might not have, I mean, it's also hard to know ahead of time what is the NFT mechanism like that will drive cash flow. You know, you have to just play, experiment, and theorize, and prove yourself wrong in thought and then in practice.
Yeah.
But like the you having fun and spending late hours trying stuff and talking about it out loud in these conversations and in other forums, that I think that has legs over time, and kind of through these conversations. Yeah, it's much easier to go that way than to do something that feels like you can kind of sell the next unit, but is like doesn't fit the mold of like why this thing had soul in the first place.
Totally.
Yeah, and like the idea is like people will play it, you know, like they're not just like gonna put this on their shelf, like they're actually gonna like learn how to use it and like use it in their own way, and like they're gonna be using a different type of instrument that they've ever used. Like I'm calling them drum machines, but like I'm trying to make them different than like your standard drum machine where all the buttons are always in the same place. So like I'm really trying to make it fun and playable for the internet.
So one thing takeaway here I think would be you should be able to access the beats from other beats that are on chain. Potentially would make it more relevant. Something composable would make it more relevant that it be on chain. But overall, it sounds like it's primarily an art project, and your goal is not even just selling the NFTs. I think is at a point just imitative of the NFT meta of the past 2 years. And really, it sounds like what you're making is in a way just like it could just be a contract that is that has this metadata associated with it. The storage on chain, so far it's not entirely clear like why it's for saving, I guess. You're just saving state to the blockchain. It's probably not a very efficient way to do it. I'm not clear that there's a real reason why this data has to be on chain aside from it's cool and amusing, which is a good reason, but it's not necessarily a reason for it's art. It's not designed to move units, which is fine. It's not a problem. But just don't get confused about it or be disappointed about it if it's pitched as art and it's, an art project. We're not in a bull market. People are not just buying art like crazy like they used to. But I think the other thing is like, is it? Well, anyway, we've been through it. There's someone else who has a hand up. Liquid 8.
Hey, thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hey, so I wanted to follow up on STV's comment about rewarding early participants in the network and how we can basically incentivize that sort of behavior. So one of the things I think about a lot is how on the L1 layer, we have blockchains that reward miners with the token to continue to add compute power to the system, right? And that creates a positive flywheel effect. But I haven't seen that on the app layer. Like, how can you use tokens to reward some sort of on-chain behavior? So that is something I've been working on. I've been working on a modified ERC20 contract. It's a staking contract. So normally the staking contracts just distribute the rewards on one factor, but I've modified it to use multiple factors, in this case two. And so the basic idea is to just reward the early users to do some sort of activity. And I think that activity is figuring out how to get more attention to that token, and then using that token to rank some sort of content that attracts more visitors to a website.
I think it's very unlikely that the DAO, the TCR, like the registry of people who are members of the thing, is better than TikTok at curating content. I think that's the challenge.
Yeah, I think about it in more of like the Reddit. So instead of having one upvote to upvote some sort of content to the top of the rankings, you would be able to stake your tokens and any amount of it. And the more you stake to it, the more rewards you potentially have if it ranks all the way to the top.
So it's like a content yield farm TCR, sort of.
Right. And the second component that is not so much like a TCR. It's I would say more of a curation market. Is this concept of the more tokens that are staked on a piece of content, the later stakers, they'll have to wait more time when they unstake. And this kind of prevents the pump and dump, because otherwise you would just have a bunch of people all stake on one content to farm all the rewards from it. And then they'd all head for the exits and dump on the exchange. So if you basically add some sort of like synthetic sell pressure, but in reality, it's not really sell pressure. It's the fact that you are having to wait this like kind of cool down period after you unstake. That deters people from just staking on any sort of garbage, because they know that, they have to wait like potentially weeks to get their tokens back before they unstake. Meanwhile, the people who staked earlier on that piece of content might only have to wait an hour.
But which audience are you monetizing here? Like who is looking at what location to be monetized in this way through this yield farm?
So I think about it very similar to different subreddits on different topics. So it could be a topic on gaming, Web3, more specific like NFTs, even like literally any topic. And that token is only used by the community members of around that topic. And they're all basically using the token to upvote content that is high quality, again, around that specific topic.
And the reason people are driven to view on this site rather than Reddit is because they're being issued tokens also, I assume?
So the viewers would not be issuing the tokens. They're just the audience. They're just the eyeballs. But if this website were to, let's say, attract millions of viewers, well, then the token that had the power to promote content to the top to be viewed by that large audience would obviously have some value, right? It'd be like...
Right, but this is this depends on you already having millions of viewers. So now you not only need to displace Reddit in a category that it's very successful at, but you are then... I think if you were the CEO of Reddit and you wanted to implement something like this, you could try. But without the views, this is a model for a site that has no views. So it doesn't... And it depends on those views to be the thing that are monetized by all these tokens. So I think it's... If you can make something that's competitive with Reddit, maybe just do that.
For sure. I definitely see that. Like the value of the token is all derived from the attention that it has. And obviously if the website has no visitors, then there's no attention. But the way I'm framing it in terms of getting the flywheel going is think of it more like a newsletter. So you could start a newsletter where you're basically curating all the best links, and you could start that newsletter with 0 subscribers and just grow it one by one. But instead of it being like this newsletter, that's just what you pick, you issue these tokens to, 10 people, 100 people, whatever.
I think the issue is that I don't want to farm out my attention to a DAO of speculators. I just don't think they're good at curating content. I don't care to participate in their machinations for speculative games. And I do prefer content from algorithms that are hyper tailored to me rather than a large DAO or whatever that is sort of generically curating content for every member the same. I don't think it makes sense in an engagement economy.
Got it. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's what I was working on.
I mean, I encourage you to keep working, but I think the problem that you're facing is like, as a user, truly you, why would you rather go to a page that is curated by speculators rather than something that is an algorithm genuinely curating content for your prior expressed interest in content? It doesn't seem like that governance mechanism is going to be better at curating. One version of, like Jango mentioned in the past, the idea of like TCRs for, say, for Juicebox. We have this juicebox.money website, and it has like a trending section and projects on the protocol. It's just a front end to a blockchain protocol. And there could be a reason to have a TCR for lifting something up on that page because it already has an audience that's very niche for this. So maybe people who hold the token in the DAO that makes the website could use a TCR to decide what is like the highlighted project today or something like that. I think that could make sense, but it is still dependent on the fact that they already have a captive audience. So I'm not sure that maybe what you're building is more a solution for someone who already has that. Maybe you need to partner with somebody who does have an audience, and would like to introduce some tokenomics.
Yeah, I mean, it could be because the idea is it'll be a factory contract that any sort of community can effectively create this token to rank whatever content they want.
I mean, give it a shot. I think the challenge is going to be driving views to that site, and then also the quality of the recommendations that the governance community builds. So you might want to adjust what you're doing so that I'm not sure what you think the core competency is of the thing, but flex that. Maybe it's not exactly curating. Maybe it's, I probably in an era of personalized recommendations, I doubt a globally look, if you have a Twitter account with 3 million followers and 3 million Web3 followers, or 1 million and 2 million bots, then you could have a TCR that's deciding what, or whatever kind of mechanism you want, that's deciding what gets tweeted. Ultimately it is payola, and it's like pay for play. I think the content quality declines over time, and you get a less and less valuable audience, but maybe a larger audience also. But like if you want to, if you're aiming for the Reddit thing, that's like a super niche community thing where people like you add Reddit to the Google search because that's where the best results are going to be. Whereas if it's well, anyway, you see what I'm pointing at.
That is what I'm envisioning as be a small group curating content around a certain topic.
I think we all have a lot to do in our lives, so there needs to be a really good reason why I want to do it. But this is related a little bit to like the idea of like single use voting tokens or things like this, where if what your DAO or your group has as a strength is distribution, then I think what you can sell is a little bit of access to that distribution. But in this scenario, it sounds like you're starting without any distribution. So maybe like, I think the big challenge for what you're talking about is building the network of people who are a captive audience, and less the specifics of the tokenomics around how to monetize that audience. If it was easy to do that, everyone would, have a successful Discord or whatever.
Right.
I think this falls a little bit into, I don't know if you were in the call earlier, but I was saying like, if the protocol depends on every user of the protocol being a Nike level marketing genius, it's going to be very hard for the protocol. Like those people who are able to do that kind of work will do it with or without your protocol. They'll do it because they have the gusto to do it, and protocols and infrastructure help them, but there's lots of options. But if you want it to be something that has an audience, it needs to be something that's easy for people to do. And this is kind of the TikTok lesson. TikTok started as Musical.ly, which was the founder was a project manager in San Francisco whatever. There's this whole apocryphal story, undoubtedly, but basically he was making short form educational content video platform. It was a failure. Nobody wanted to use it. And then he rejiggered the whole thing to be around lip syncing videos, and they would have themes, hashtag themes, new ones every single day, push notifications to all the users, encouraging them to record their lip dub for today's hot song really engagement maxing through notification channels. And then through that, they were able to get to a generalized video, short form video, and now long form video platform. But it didn't start as that. It started as extremely precise niche activity amongst an audience that was specifically chosen because they had a desire to create music videos on their phones with their friends. They had free time and they had no compunction about doing so in public. So it was very, very, very precise to like this tween audience. So maybe there's some version of what you're doing that's like that could be very precise to an audience that really wants it badly.
I think the key thing what you just said is the iteration cycle. STVG brought this up earlier as being an important, a potentially important factor in the design of an effective NFT or any kind of strategy for cash flow generation. That's just being able to learn and adapt and change in short cycles and in meaningful cycles. It's very hard to set an experiment up that you're committed to for years on end. Maybe that is the experiment, that's the value prop, but otherwise, kind of shorter moments or shorter experiments with tighter theses that you're not kind of attached to very much. They're disposable. They are unapologetically experimental and probably won't work. And going into it with that, I think, headspace allows you to kind of turn through these quickly and creating mechanisms that do have this tighter lifespan help, whereas things that are indefinite in nature may be more complex.
So we're almost headed to the end of 2 hours, and I have a phone call that I already have delayed by an hour that I need to get to. But before we run, I wanted to know, Jin or Ibn Inglor, did you have anything you wanted to talk about briefly, or maybe we can set up another meeting to go in depth on your projects?
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd love to do something from the Juicebox HQ, and voxels.
Fuck yeah.
Yes, that space is so tight. And that's like, there's so much to do there. And I feel like that's symbiotic with what Lexicon Devils is doing. And it's about time. I think like that experiment's proving out to be like interesting. And I'd be excited to support and help folks build on that for sure. Such a gorgeous space.
Thanks, yeah. I definitely, I don't want to keep you out too long, but the project I'm working on right now is one that's already out. It's called the Danger Zone EP. I released it, I want to say just last year, but I've been building on it since like the year before last, so about 2 years now total. And the project basically is just it's an NFT music project, but I've been racking my head kind of against the wall trying to figure out like the proper utility to kind of build around it. There's a lot of different things that like I have in mind that I want to do, like one-of-one merch raffles for holders and collectors, and what else? More tangible things. It's like you could get to come sit in on a studio session or a master a session to see how much effort went into making like either the whole project or at least like 1 3-minute song, 1 4-minute song, just something that's like a lot more tangible for people that like really fuck with my music and just rock with me as a person or artist in general. I really was just being a fly on the wall in there because this is my first office hours, so I could jump in more depth into it like at a later date. Just don't want to run over time.
Yeah, it's my first office hours too. Let's do this again next week. Maybe I was also thinking we should try to monetize this. I don't know how to do that exactly. Obviously, we could do like reservations for talking about your project for 15 minutes or something. I don't know if that makes sense. We could be very experimental about funding this office hours thing. Someone called it Shark Tank. But yeah, if anybody has feedback, Juicebox Discord, please, let's talk about what's useful. I'm going to continue to be a hard ass about making things that people who don't know you also want. And yeah, let's do, does this time work for people, like Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific? Seems good?
Yep.
Yeah, shouts Nicholas for leading the way here and appreciate the tone of the combo.
Okay, good. I don't mean to be mean.
No, it's you, dog. And like you bring that heat and it's extremely important, extremely valuable, and it balances out a lot of stuff. And much love and much appreciation.
Totally. And I appreciate everything you were saying also about the long-term vision, because definitely this energy I'm promulgating right now is very like, let's make some money right away. So very good to have the balance of, do things slowly and build a community slowly. Both are viable. And maybe what we can get to is that these enduring smaller communities start to do small experiments that are more trying to make something happen right now, while all that feeding back into a more longer vision. Maybe that's a way. Anyway, let's do this again next Wednesday.
See you, Nicholas. Thank you.
All right. See everybody next week.